Folks, welcome back to the Frontier Western Heritage Channel. I'm Todd Kessner, formerly of Bozeman, Montana, and recently moved to Tucson, Arizona. And today we're going to do an unpacking video. So most of the time when you see an unpacking video or a unboxing video, as people sometimes call it, it's someone taking things out of a box and showing you what comes in the box. This is a literal unpacking video because I have recently moved here to the Tucson area, and I still have tons of things in boxes, and moved into an apartment. Couldn't take everything out of the box, had no place to put it. Now I'm in a more permanent home and I'm getting stuff situated for real where it can go and stay there and not have to be moved again and reboxed and gone off to the next property. So kind of feeling a little more permanent. And so as I'm sorting through this stuff, I'm rediscovering things that I don't believe I've talked about. So in one of the boxes, I've opened it up and I'm ready to set up my Tumbler stone polish drum and then the motor that turns it, but I use it for cleaning brass. If you haven't made a move to one of these wet tumblers and you're still working with a vibratory case cleaner, you will know, and I do because I did it for many years, that as you clean that case, it does polish them up pretty well, but it also packs dust into the primer pocket. At least every media I could find on one of those, even with brass polish in it and the whole 9 yards, I would spend hours with the little tool cleaning out the primer pocket and getting the primer ready to seat properly. And even the inside of the case gets dusty a little bit and never really gets completely clean. When I switched over to this wet stone tumbling type of machine and cleaning process, absolutely amazed that it cleaned the outside of the case very well. I've got a little bit of polish I pour in there, cleans the inside of the case, and it looks like brand new brass coming out of this, and the primer pockets are all clean. Now they're going to come out sopping wet, so you've got to dry them, and so there's a step there, but I would rather let them sit out for a couple hours and dry in a rack rather than spend a couple hours turning that tool in the primer pocket. So if you've been doing this for years, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You may think that, oh my gosh, this guy is just going over old ground. But some folks haven't made this change yet. And there's always something new to learn, and there's something for you to comment on as well, because you may have some techniques that I don't have yet and would love to hear them in the comments. So I'm going to go out in the garage. We're going to pop the primers out of some old dirty cartridges. We're going to put them in the machine and let it tumble for a while and come back and see what we've got. So far in this unpacking process, at least I've got my old Lyman Spar T press set up that I'm going to use to pop the primers out of this. I got this thing when I was 16 years old. I can't believe what my folks let me do at 16. I must have been a mature kid or something, because most parents wouldn't have their kids reloading at 16. But learn how to do it. Never had a problem, and I don't know if I recommend that for every teenager today, but that was something that I was able to do and get started pretty young, and have had this press ever since then. So I've got some 45s, and let me see if I can make sure that, let me get that in the middle of the camera here. I want you to see the fouling on this. This is a black powder round that I should have cleaned up a long time ago. I didn't. Found it in one of my boxes, and I'm like, you know what, I better throw these in the cleaner. So it gives a good example of a round that's got some black powder fouling on it. So I'm going to pop the primers out of these. This is the 45 Colt, and so I'm using a universal primer. The nice thing about the universal D-primer is that it doesn't touch the sides of the case. It just the pin pops the primer out, and you're not getting, especially if you're shooting black powder cartridge, it doesn't get the inside of the die covered in black powder fouling. So if you can see this, let me get that, if I can get this to focus for you. Let me see if I can get that. Very dirty primer pocket. And again, this is black powder fouling. So I'm going to pop some more of these out, and we're going to put them in the media with some water and see what we get. I also have some 4440s that I'm going to throw in and get those cleaned as well. And also a few 38s, just for demonstration purposes. I'm going to throw in a couple 38s and see what happens there. And so give me a second to get these rest of these de-primed, and we'll come back and put our media in the tank, in the tub, and a little bit of soap, and get her started. So I've got them all decapped, and again I use the universal decapping tool, depriming tool. And what's nice again is that it doesn't really shape anything, doesn't touch any part of the fouled cartridge case, just the pin that goes through. And so you don't have to worry about getting fouling all over the inside, particularly black powder fouling all over the inside of your die. And you can do these things dirty. So I've got, I don't know if I showed you this or not, but the inside of the case is just absolutely black. And what you should do when you're shooting black powder cartridge is have a jug of water with you with a little bit of dish soap in it. And when you're shooting the cartridges, just drop them, black powder, just drop them in that solution, slosh it around a little bit, and you'd be surprised how much fouling will come off. That is the ideal way. And then when you come back, you haven't got to deal with such a dirty case, and you don't have this fouling sitting on these cases for so long. However, we all fall down sometimes, and didn't get that done. But it does give us a very good demonstration here of how clean these things can get. So I've got 3 different sizes of the ceramic media. This is what goes in the tumbler and does the cleaning. And I use the larger one. I'll put a picture on the screen so you can see this more clearly, but I use the larger one for the 45, 44. Works great on the 5090 Sharps brass, works great on the 4570 brass as well. I've got a medium size, a middle size that I'll use on 38s usually, and that works really well on 38s. And I've got even a smaller one that I use on those 32s if you watched any of the pocket pistol videos. So the largest one is 17/100ths of an inch. The medium one that I've got is 12/100ths of an inch. And then the smallest one is 10/100ths of an inch. So you would think, as I did, what difference does it make on what size these ceramic media pieces are? They're going to clean the inside and the outside regardless if they're bigger or smaller or whatever. And I have found, as many of you probably have tried this before, some of them are exactly the right size to go down inside of a case, like the ones I'm using in the 45, can go down inside of a 38 case, look like a bunch of roller bearings down inside that case, stick there so hard that you can't get them back out. I've had to take a small little nail, go through the flash hole in the back of the brass and try to knock those back out. So when you have 500 of these things in this tumbling apparatus and you have to knock that media out every time, it takes you forever and you'll swear off ever using these things again. But if you get the right size of the ceramic beads in there, or ceramic cylinders is really what they are, you don't have that problem. They'll just fall out. And so that's why there's different sizes, and so you've just got to experiment a little bit with these things and see what works for you. But I do know that the .12 works very, very well with 38s. I know that the .10 works well with my 32s, and the bigger one, the 17/100ths of an inch, works very well with the 45, 50 caliber on up like that, and I don't get them jammed in. And if I do get them jammed a little bit, I can knock them out very, very easily. So let's go ahead and put these in the drum, add a little bit of polishing solution and our ceramic media. So here's the inside of the drum. It's just a rubberized sleeve that goes in here. And this one is that Thumler's Tumbler. There are several out there. This isn't an advertisement for any particular one. They all have the same idea. They're going to tumble this brass inside of along with the media inside and some polishing solution. And I would guess you get equal results. One nice thing about this one, it is made to be a rock tumbler, I think is when they first came out as, and they kind of advertise it as that still. But it holds a lot. I can get, well, I've probably done 300 for sure. You might jam 538s in here and actually make it work. Of course, the tighter you pack it, the longer it takes to clean that stuff because it's just got to get around all those extra cases. But for a couple hundred at a time, 300 at a time, it's absolutely fine. So I'm going to put that there. I'm going to dump in my ceramic media, these little beads, put those in there. And let's throw our cartridges in as well and get enough so that I can dump the rest. So I'm just going to add tap water to this thing. And you want to have enough so you've got plenty of room for it to slosh around. So I don't want to take the tap water all the way to the top. Just brought some out from the house in an Arizona iced tea jug. How appropriate. Who would have thought a year ago that would have a whole different meaning to it. So I'm going to add just a little bit of the brass polish. This is made by a gentleman in Michigan, and I really like it because it's more like using dish soap. It doesn't have all the caustic smell feel to it that other brass polishers do, and it works really, really well. So I'm going to dump this in just like you would a little bit of dish soap. And I know that I use too much. The guy that makes this stuff has actually told me I use too much, but I also get fantastic results. And it's never caused me any problems. So I'm going to just dribble a little in there. All right, let me get this where the camera can see and you folks can see what I've got in here. Let me shake it a little bit so you can see the water line. So I've got my ceramic beads in there. I've got the brass. I've got the brass polish, and I've left enough room. So I've got plenty of room for this to slosh around and do a nice job of cleaning. So I'm going to put the lid on, and then we can throw it on the machine. All right, we've got a steel lid, rubberized back. This fits over the 6 bolt heads sticking out. Put on the washers. And tighten down the wing nuts. Kind of like to do this like you're changing a tire, so that we'll go opposites. Snug them up just a little bit. So we don't squeeze one side down too hard and then not be able to get the other side sealed very well. You don't have to have them clamped down incredibly hard, but just enough to make sure you get that seal. And then it's ready to put on the actual turner. So here's the electric motor and the frame that the drum sits on in order to turn. And it's not brand new. I've had this for a long time, but when I moved, I cleaned everything up, and I was really surprised how clean it came. It looks like it just came out of the box, although it's had a ton of use. So I'm going to throw the drum on here, let this thing run for several hours. Normally I would just let it go overnight, and I'll check it out tonight and find out if it got clean enough, because I want to make sure that you see how clean they can get. Normally I'd run them overnight, I'd take it out the next day, clean it up, and they're absolutely beautiful. Let's see what it does over the course of today. Another tip that I've found to be very helpful is I set this whole platform on a rubberized shelf liner so that it kind of deadens some of the sound and noise of this thing spinning. It also keeps it from vibrating itself right off of your bench. So I'm going to put this on here. The on-off switch is plugging it in. I'm going to let it run for a few hours, and we'll see what we get. So we've been running about 10 hours here with the tumbler, so I'm going to unplug it, grab my strainer, and let's go see what we got. Let's take the wing nuts off here, see what we got. It's going to be extra dirty because of the black powder fouling, but it's still plenty black even with regular smokeless, especially with cowboy loads that seem to leave a lot of fouling behind, even though they're smokeless. These guys off. Okay. Rinse this guy off. All right, let me see if I can tip it just enough for a little bit of a view into the cauldron here, the dirty dark water. And I'll see if I can find a piece of brass too while I'm at it. So here's what we've got. See if I can get this thing to autofocus. There we go. And boy, there's a little bit of a shadow. Let me turn the light on here. There we go. The primer pocket is nice and shiny. This is one of the 4440 cases. The inside isn't as clean as if I had done it overnight. That's the only downside I'm seeing with this one. But you can see what that polish does, and it's got the primer pocket all cleared out. And it's ready to reload. And again, I'm not as happy with the inside as sometimes, but that could be the case too. So let's see if we got another one. Fish out a 45. right, kind of the same thing. So overnight would definitely help. Looks like there's a bubble in this one. Overnight would definitely help the interior of the case. But again, I've got a very shiny exterior, well polished, and I don't have to do anything to the primer pocket. So I'm going to plug up the sink with the stoppers, and we're going to pour this mixture through the strainer. One thing is, make sure you plug up the side that has your garbage disposal, because you do not want to get a bunch of ceramic media down inside of there. Let's move this camera over, see if I can get where you can see what I'm doing. So I got the double bottom sink here. I'm going to use one side to wash out the media from the strainer, and I'm going to use the other side primarily as just a place to drop the brass, because I want to wash all of the soap and things off. So I'm going to get a little bit of water going, kind of lukewarm. And excuse me, I'm going to reach across the front here. Sink isn't quite big enough, but I can see if I can get this down in here. All right, I'll rinse this out too before I put it back out in the garage. And I'm going to use this sprayer on here. We're going to get this stuff cleaned out, get all the black stuff coming out the bottom. Looking pretty darn good, actually. All right, so here's one of my 38s. I was hoping this would happen just to be able to show you. But some of these are just the right size to completely plug up your case, and then you have one heck of a time getting them out of there. See how tight this one is? So sometimes I've got to get a little bit of a tack or something small but blunt on the end. There we go, got the, yeah, they came out. If you can imagine having to do that to 500 of them, and that was an easy one. Sometimes I have to get a pair of needle nose pliers to get the ceramic beads out of there. And when you can just dump it out, it's so much easier. So that's the reason that one came out. That's the reason why you use the smaller ones for a smaller caliber. They just aren't the same, they're not the size that plugs it up. So I'm going to just pull these out of here, dump them out, make sure there's none in there. You don't want to find them, beads in there, that is. You don't want to find your bead on the bottom when you got it in the press. And I didn't do that many, so this won't take too terrible long. But the inside of the case is not as good as I like it. So that, again, I've said that several times now, but that's the only thing I can see at 10 hours instead of more like 24 that bothers me. And so far I'm getting kind of lucky on my 38s. But even with 10 hours of tumbling, I am very happy with the primer pocket. Primer pocket came out great. I just have these guys setting in clean water. And just to take off any soap, just slosh them around a little bit. And then when I do that, after I'm done with that, I'll put them over here. And this is just a piece of hardwood cut to as close to 45 Colt size of the case as possible. And I just drop the shells down in there. You can see that over time, having to get wet, dry, and wet and dry, it's warped a little bit. So sometimes they fall all the way down. These are the 4440s, and sometimes they stick. This depends on what part of this rack that I'm on. And of course, 4440s are going to fall in there a little easier, as long as they are held upright and they have a chance to dry. So I get the rest of these, and really that's about all there is to it. Well, that's about all there is to the process of polishing brass with ceramic media and a tub and some stuff that acts like dish soap. And to get your brass looking brand new on the outside, primer pocket all cleaned out, don't have to go back with any kind of brush and clean that out further. The only disappointment in 10 hours of tumbling is the inside was not as clean as I'm used to. If I go 24 hours, that cleans out. So that's just a consequence of not letting it run for a whole day, and my work schedule is not allowing me to do that and film and get this thing together in any expedient amount of time. So I just had to go with 10 hours today and live with it. Doesn't hurt anything. It just isn't as pretty as I'm used to. But a very effective method. I like it so much better than running in a vibratory cleaner with the corn cob or walnut shell or anything like that. It does polish better than the vibratory cleaners that use a wet solution and doesn't take the chemical that machine takes. And so for me, it's a very good way of doing a lot of brass. It takes a long time to rinse them all, put them in a rack if you've got 300 or 400 inside the tub, 38s or something. But when you consider how long it takes to clean out primer pockets and everything and get them clean after you've got them all dusty with the media, it really isn't that bad. You end up with a case that you're really happy with. So that's the process. If you've done this before and you've got any further tips, be happy to see them in the comments. Hope you learned something. And once again this week, I just want to thank you for coming. More recently moved to Tucson, Arizona. I had my Thumler. So far I have my Lyman Old Spar T press. Is that what you call it? Yeah. So let's dump these in the, what do you want to call this thing? Barrel? Tumbler? What am I going to call it? Drum. Dripping all over the floor. My mic fell off in the process. I'm not quite happy with the inside. That is just a consequence. Well, that's about all there is to polishing. Now I gotta go clean up the kitchen before Mama finds out what I was doing with her sink.